The artifact had stood silent for 3,000 years. Ginny pressed her palm against the observation window of the research station, watching the massive structure below. The gate, as it had been dubbed by the Galactic Council, rose from the barren moon's surface like a monument to forgotten gods. 70 meters tall, constructed from a metal that defied analysis, covered in symbols that shifted when observed directly. Still nothing, Han's voice crackled through her comm unit. Nothing, Ginny confirmed, her breath fogging the glass. The Valorians just finished their attempt. Same result as everyone else. She'd watched 17 species try to activate the gate over the past 6 months. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had sent their best scientists, their most powerful technology, their most gifted psychics. The Jathiri had chanted in frequencies that could shatter mountains. The Mechanist Collective had interfaced directly with the structure using quantum processors. The ancient preservers who claimed to remember the gate's builders had performed rituals passed down through millennia. The gate had remained dark and silent for all of them. "Command wants us to pack up," Han said, materializing beside her. He was still in his pressure suit, frost clinging to his shoulders from the surface expedition. "They're calling it a loss. Too much resources spent, 0 returns." Ginny turned to face him. Han was young for a xenoarchaeologist, barely 30, but his eyes held the weariness of someone who'd seen too many mysteries remain unsolved. She understood. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council only 50 years ago, still the newest species, still trying to prove they belonged among civilizations that had mastered space travel before humans had discovered fire. "One more day," Ginny said. "Let me try something." Han raised an eyebrow. "Ginny, if the preservers couldn't activate it?" "Exactly. They're trying to activate it like they would their own technology. But what if the builders weren't like any species we know? That's a lot of what-ifs for a career that's already on thin ice." Han's expression softened. "Director Vrax already thinks humans are wasting Council resources." Ginny knew he was right. Humanity's contribution to galactic science had been viewed as marginal at best, enthusiastic but naive at worst. They were the species that still used chemical rockets within living memory, that had nearly destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons, that had only just begun to understand the basics of quantum manipulation that every other species took for granted. But there was something about the gate that called to her. 24 hours, she insisted. "If I can't figure it out, we'll leave." Han sighed, but she saw the hint of a smile. "You're going down there, aren't you?" "Someone has to." The moon's surface was a wasteland of gray dust and jagged rocks. Ginny's boots crunched across the regolith as she approached the gate, her suit's environmental systems humming softly. Above the gas giant the moon orbited filled half the sky, bands of purple and gold swirling in eternal storms. The gate loomed before her, imposing and inscrutable. Up close she could see the symbols more clearly, not really shifting, she realized, but responding to the viewer's focus, like they existed in more dimensions than human eyes could properly perceive. She'd read every report, studied every failed attempt. The Galactic Council's hypothesis was that the gate required a specific genetic marker, or perhaps a particular form of consciousness. Some theorized it was a test, others a lock, and still others believed it was simply broken, a relic that had long ago exhausted whatever power source it once possessed. Ginny approached slowly, extending one gloved hand toward the surface. The moment her fingertips made contact, the universe exploded with light. "Ginny!" Han's voice was panicked in her ear. "What's happening?" "All our sensors just went insane." She couldn't answer. The symbols on the gate were blazing with golden radiance, flowing like liquid across the metal surface. They spiraled toward her hand, concentrating at the point of contact. The light intensified until it was almost painful to look at, and Ginny felt something impossibly vast turn its attention toward her, not toward her species, not toward humanity as a collective, toward her specifically, toward Ginny Chen, xenoarchaeologist, daughter of farmers, human. And in that moment of contact she understood. The gate wasn't locked by genetics or technology or consciousness. It was locked by time, by potential, by the specific combination of youth and experience, innocence and knowledge, ambition and humility that characterized a species at a particular point in their development. The ancient builders hadn't created a test. They'd created a welcome mat, and every other species in the galaxy had grown too advanced to trigger it. The preservers were too old, their civilization calcified by millennia of tradition. The Jathiri were too powerful, their abilities making them gods among lesser species. The Mechanist Collective had transcended biological limitations entirely, but humanity was still growing, still learning, still capable of being surprised. They carried within them the memory of being primitive, the knowledge of their own violent history, and the desperate hope for something better. They were young enough to have retained their wonder, old enough to understand what that wonder meant. The gate didn't want perfection. It wanted potential. The symbols resolved into language, not any language Ginny knew, but meaning flowed directly into her mind. Images of vast networks connecting distant stars, knowledge of technologies that would take humanity centuries to develop on their own, and above all, an invitation. The builders had been like humanity once, young, imperfect, reaching for the stars with trembling hands. They'd built the gates as waypoints, leaving them for species like themselves. Species who were ready not because they were advanced, but because they still remembered what it meant to reach beyond their grasp. "Ginny, talk to me," Han was practically shouting. The light faded. The gate remained active, its surface now displaying a swirling portal to somewhere impossibly distant. Ginny stepped back, her hand trembling. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "Han, contact the council. Tell them we need to talk. What happened?" "What did you do?" Ginny looked up at the gas giant, at the stars beyond, at the infinite possibilities that had just opened before humanity. "I rang the doorbell," she said, and someone answered. Behind her, the gate pulsed with welcoming light, waiting for humanity to take its first real step into the galaxy. The ancient species would have questions. They would want to understand how the newest, least advanced species had succeeded where they had failed, and Ginny would tell them the truth. Sometimes the newest voice in the conversation is exactly what's needed. Sometimes being young isn't a weakness. Sometimes it's the whole point.